Okay, so without further ado, I am so excited to introduce you to Emily Morgan. Like I said, she is the CEO, founder, visionary of Delegate Solutions, and she is here today to help talk through the 5 bottleneck behaviors of leaders today, to really help us all to understand how we can delegate and elevate and get to that next level. So without further ado, I would love to hand the baton off to Emily Morgan.
Thank you, Meg. So honored to be here. Let me get my screen sharing now. Is that good? Okay.
Yes.
All right. So as Meg shared, today we're going to talk about a portion of my new book called Let It Go. And specifically, we're going to work through some of the bottleneck behaviors of leaders. But you know, this work comes out of 15 years of helping leaders become better delegators. And as I worked through writing this content, I really uncovered that I think that we're having the wrong conversations about delegation, and that it's actually a lot more deep work than maybe what we think it is. And that a lot of the things that we struggle with are our own set of limiting beliefs, behavioral choices, and self-sabotaging thoughts that keep us from ever really letting go. So until we address these root behaviors, we're always going to find ourselves struggling with it, no matter how much training or organization we try to put together for ourselves to become a better delegator. So today we're going to look at one component of that, the bottleneck behaviors. I want to share a little bit about what they are, why they happen, and how we can modify behavior around them. So in Let It Go, I teach that there's 3 parts to delegating well, which helps us really have an objective view as we look at why we're struggling with delegation. So as we work through this, we want to identify which part of the delegation is breaking down. Is it the art, the science, or the discipline? So the discipline is really about your own commitment to seeing delegation through. And the art is really how you approach what you're delegating, how you design what's coming off your plate. And then the science is how you manage the handoff from your plate to someone else's. So if you can look at that objectively and diagnose really which part you or perhaps the visionary you're working with is stuck on, then you can think more objectively and use tools to attack it really strategically. Sometimes though, recognize it might be a mix of all 3, but at least looking at it in this framework gives you the tools to have a really effective conversation. So today we're focusing on discipline. That's part 1 of that wheel. And this is probably the hardest part of delegating well for so many people, because the discipline piece is about focus and commitment to actually see things through. And it's about understanding and accepting that progress is more important than perfection, and continuing with the commitment to see things through, even if we get bored, get distracted, is really what will help us make true progress. And I didn't mention on that first slide, I'm just going to go back to it. In the bottom left corner there's a QR code. If you want to click that, I think Tara also put the link in the chat section, but that'll pull up the tools that I'm going to run through quickly today. So I'll go back for one more second. And just grab the link in the chat if you need to. Okay, so leaders that are struggling with this part of delegation, it can manifest into what we call bottleneck behaviors, which can slow everyone down and actually block the flow of delegation. And these behaviors actually hinder our success as well as our teams, because we know we all exhibit at least one of these types, sometimes all of them in a given day. And it's interesting to think about that these are psychological and emotional. So some habits are developed over time, and some are just hardwired into us. And typically we don't have a lot of awareness about these behaviors or even view them as bottlenecks. But there's an exercise that we've created called a bottleneck diagnostic that you can take to unpack what type you might be exhibiting. And what that does is it really gives you the ability to name the behavior, spot it, and then stop it. So it gives us a vocabulary that we can use with our team as we see these different behaviors come up. So in that download pack on the QR code, there's a bottleneck diagnostic that you can take. And I'm going to just do a quick overview of what the types are, and then we'll talk about what causes them to happen and what we can do about it. So the 5 types are the hero. So the hero always wants to save the day. The interventionist, it's your classic micromanager. They always love to be in the loop. The isolationist is the person who's always saying, I'll just do it myself. The time optimist, which is my single greatest bottleneck behavior type, is being really unrealistic about time and capacity. And then the dreamer is someone who just loves to ideate. But again, what we're going for in this very quick talk through this behavioral content is that it's going to give you vocabulary and a common language that you can use to have a really productive conversation with your team. So let's dig into the hero. So as I mentioned, the hero always wants to save the day, and the team likely requires so much permission to get anything done that you're stunting company and employee growth. And entrepreneurs in particular are super notorious for being really prideful on this feeling of being needed. And a lot of the times can get really energized by the adrenaline that comes out of being needed. They can start to attribute their worth to it, et cetera. But of course, it's not a sustainable plan for growth to have a company that can't run without you. So as it happens, typically processes, there's not a lot of work happening around getting processes to remove the CEO from the day-to-day. Your team has been conditioned to run everything through you. You might have wrong people, wrong seats. And this constant state of confusion can really lead to something that we call delegation blocking, because your team doesn't really understand, what their role is in the process. So just a quick slide on some heroes for some solutions for heroes. So first, we always want to commit to extract ourselves. It always starts just with that personal acknowledgement and commitment. And making sure that you notice when your team is constantly coming to you and starting to redirect them to not include you in everything. One little tip with this last piece is if you can have a gatekeeper for your time, this can really help this process of you being able to say no, someone verbally redirecting the team away from you. So type 2 is the interventionist, always loves to be in the loop. Everyone who is this type feels nobody can do it as well as I can. You find yourself always in the 80% rather than focusing on the 20% of your most important work. And you're actually, in some cases, not even committed to the delegation being successful because you haven't properly prepared or don't trust the process. And a lot of the times, this has developed because you're inserting yourself to remain in the loop all the time. And this constant need to control the outcome just winds up frustrating your team and then causes them to retreat because they don't feel like their contribution matters. So how it happens, as you build the company or help build the company, everything stems from you, your ideas, your plan, your vision, everything requires your participation. And you might have tried to find support in the past, but if it has failed, there's a likelihood to go into this cocooning tendency to sort of protect yourself from errors of team members. And a lot of the times you haven't committed the time to make the delegation successful or given the clarity for your team to actually execute well. So the third type is the interventionist. Excuse me, I'm sorry. These are the solutions for the interventionist. So a few ways you can do that is to find the right support solution. It could be a staffing issue that's getting you hung up. If you have a wrong fit team member that's broken trust, a lot of the times we see like scar tissue that can build up over time if delegation's gone wrong. And then once you have the right support in place, train yourself on how to properly delegate by using a delegation template. So there's one in the download pack that you received, and this is actually the template that we use with our team when we're managing delegations. So it's just like a very easy step-by-step process to follow. Okay, so isolationist, this is the person who says, I'll just do it myself. And what happens is typically your team isn't really clear on the process. They always need additional details. You're never available for conversations. So we see this a lot with clients we work with who are so busy and they want help and they get help, but then they don't actually have time to talk to anybody to actually move things forward. And so for delegation to really work well, you have to put value on the time needed to delegate effectively. And how this happens, typically you're overloaded, like in the example I was given, but you really haven't spent time to make any traction with the delegation. And then because you're so overwhelmed, you provide minimal details to the team, sometimes can have really unrealistic expectations, and don't have time to close the loop on delegations with your team. So I find this happening too with myself. If I try to delegate something and then I've sort of forgotten about it, we use time blocking to come back through, and I'll say, can I have a half-hour time block to finish my portion when you're done with it? So that just sort of completes the cycle. And a couple solutions for isolationist: you want to have a standing meeting every week, and you want to be highly selective about what you're delegating so that you can sort of start small to build confidence. So type 4 is the time optimist. This is my type. And we can be really unrealistic with the time and resources that we have. So we have a lot of energy about ideas, but then lack restraint to action-best ideas. And the team can really get unfocused and confused because they're being told to action multiple things at once, and they're really not able to focus on crucial results for the day. And this comes out of sort of you and your brilliance with developing new ideas, and excitement around that can be perceived as urgent. And it can actually wind up being really toxic to your team because your team is likely living in execution while you're living in ideation. And so everything they're hearing, they're just thinking they have to execute on. And then it becomes really complicated for them to prioritize. So a few solutions: align on what things are priority, and make sure you're on the same page of who's doing what by when. And then make sure you're establishing accountability and timelines before you start to delegate. So anytime you're talking about it, just have a recap sentence. Okay, you're going to do this by this time. This is the priority, and just sort of realign on what the priorities are for the day. And the last type is the dreamer. So the dreamer loves to ideate. A lot of the times, though, they haven't really defined what success looks like, which makes them unclear when they try to delegate because they haven't thought through how they're going to execute the ideas in detail. But the ambiguity around your own commitment to this idea or concept can really be a confidence killer for your team. And it can really start to drive them crazy because they don't have what they need from you to actually action something. And it can slowly chip away at the confidence and impact and productivity on the team. And how it happens: so you love to hang out in idea creation. No one does it better than you when you have dreams time after time and courage around that. But the challenge really lies in the handoff of how you are getting it off your plate to the people who help you bring it to life. And what they need from you is clarity and commitment to see your most important ideas through. So some solutions for dreamers: don't delegate until you're clear yourself that the project or work is actually important to you. So a lot of the times, if we force ourselves to be disciplined to fill out a delegation template, think about what success looks like before we try and just throw it at someone, we can have a lot more success. And then to my earlier point, don't over delegate to your team. Make sure they know what the priorities are. Make sure you've thought through your concept and that you're using a template to test your ideas. So those are a very quick overview of the 5 bottleneck types. And if one of those resonated with you, I'd encourage you to just jot down what type that was. In the download integrator kit, you're going to find the full diagnostic with a lot more detail around each type and different things you can do to resolve it. You can have your team take this, perhaps your visionary, and teach them the language and have a really great conversation around that. Also in this bundle, this is a brand new content piece we put together just for integrators. It includes the 2-chapter download of Let It Go. It also includes a lot of our different favorite tools, as well as an interview with my integrator, Joe, and I. We sort of talk through our 9 years of working together as visionary and integrator. So everything is on that QR code or the bit.ly link that Tara shared. But thank you for having me. I'm from New Jersey. That was a really fast way of talking, but thanks for having me.
Emily, that was awesome. I love how you condense that, and I could see where I am. I could see where other people I've worked with, and I love that you provided some quick little tidbits on solutions. So I can't wait to dive in. And thank you for all of the tools. It was amazing.